Abraham's story is one of the most powerful and enduring narratives in all of Scripture. A story of faith, obedience, sacrifice, and divine promise. Known as the father of faith, Abraham's life marks a turning point in human history, where God's covenant with one man set the foundation for an entire nation, and, ultimately, for three of the world's major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But who was Abraham? What made him so special that God chose him to be the father of nations? And what lessons from his life still resonate with us today? To understand Abraham, we must first look at the world he came from. Abraham was born as Abram in the city of Ur of the Chaldeans, an ancient and prosperous city located in what is now modern-day Iraq. Ur was a place of wealth and sophistication, but also of deep spiritual darkness. The people worshipped many gods, including the moon, god Nana. It was in this environment that Abram first heard the voice of the one true God, a God who would call him to leave behind everything he knew for a future he could not yet see. In the book of Genesis, chapter 12, we read that God spoke to Abram and said, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." With that, Abram was faced with an unimaginable decision. He was 75 years old, settled, and established. Yet he was being asked to leave his home and step into the unknown without knowing where he was going. What's remarkable is that Abram obeyed. He didn't argue. He didn't demand a map or a detailed plan. He simply trusted. This act of faith is the defining feature of his life. It shows us that true faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. Abram's obedience to God was radical, especially in a time when security, family, and land meant everything. He left Ur and journeyed to Canaan, where God appeared to him again and promised, "To your offspring, I will give this land." But this promise came with an apparent problem. Abram and his wife Sarai were childless. Sarai was well beyond the age of childbearing, and the hope of having children seemed impossible. Yet God's promise stood firm. Abram was to be the father of a great nation, even though he had no heir. This test of faith would become one of the central struggles of his life. Years passed, and still, there was no child. Sarai urged Abram to have a child with her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar. Abram agreed, and Hagar bore him a son named Ishmael. But this decision brought tension and conflict. Sarai grew jealous, and Hagar's presence in the household caused strife. Though Abram loved Ishmael, God made it clear that the promised child would come not through Hagar, but through Sarai herself. When Abram was 99 years old, God appeared to him again, reaffirming his covenant. This time, God changed his name from Abram, meaning exalted father, to Abraham, meaning father of many nations. Sarai's name was also changed to Sarah, meaning princess. These new names represented not just identity, but destiny. God promised that Sarah would bear a son, and through him, Abraham's descendants would become as numerous as the stars in the sky. It must have seemed absurd. Abraham was 100 years old, and Sarah 90. Sarah laughed when she heard the news. Yet, as impossible as it seemed, the promise came to pass. Sarah conceived and bore a son, and they named him Isaac, meaning laughter. The laughter that once came from disbelief turned into joy. Through Isaac, God's covenant would continue. A promise of land, blessing, and nationhood. However, Abraham's greatest test was still to come. In Genesis 22, God commanded Abraham to take Isaac, his long-awaited, beloved son, and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on Mount Moriah. This command must have shattered Abraham's heart. The very son through whom God had promised to fulfill his covenant was now to be offered up as a sacrifice. Yet Abraham obeyed. He didn't hesitate, question, or plead. The next morning, He rose early, took Isaac, and set out for the mountain. As they walked together, Isaac noticed something was missing. "Father," he said, "the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham replied with one of the most profound statements of faith in the entire Bible. God himself will provide the lamb. When they reached the place, Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, and bound his son Isaac. He raised the knife to slay him, but just as he was about to strike, the angel of the Lord called out, "Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. God had provided. He took the ram and sacrificed it instead of his son. This moment was more than a test. It was a prophetic symbol. After this test, God renewed his covenant with Abraham, promising once again to bless him, multiply his descendants, and make them a blessing to all nations. Abraham's faith was not perfect. He made mistakes, doubted at times, and even lied to protect himself, but his heart remained faithful to God's call. Through his life, we learn that faith is not about perfection. It's about trust, perseverance, and obedience, even when the path ahead seems unclear. Abraham went on to live a long life. He witnessed Isaac grow, and before his death, he even arranged for Isaac's marriage to ensure that the promise of a great nation would continue. Sarah passed away before him, and Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah as a burial site, making it the first piece of the promised land he ever truly owned. Abraham was later buried there as well, alongside his beloved Sarah. The legacy of Abraham did not end with his death. His descendants, through Isaac and Jacob, became the nation of Israel. Through Ishmael, his other son, came many Arab nations. His life became the foundation for faith traditions that would shape the course of history. Jews honor him as the father of their nation. Christians see him as the model of faith, justified by his belief in God's promise. And Muslims revere him as a prophet and friend of God, calling him Ibrahim. The story of Abraham isn't just a tale from ancient times. It's a living reminder that faith still moves mountains, obedience still brings blessings, and God's promises never fail. Like Abraham, we too are called to trust, to follow, and to believe, even when the path ahead is unseen. The story of Abraham teaches us that when we walk in faith, we don't just change our own lives. We shape the destiny of generations to come. His journey is not just a story from the past. It's a blueprint for every believer who dares to trust in God's promises.